Now, I'm going to shift to cancer, and I'm going to feature Dr. T. Colin Campbell. That's the first image I ever saw of him. That was him in China during the massive China Cornell-Oxford project, where he was the overall director from Cornell University. And this is my new friend, Dr. John Kelly, who is the general practitioner in Ireland that wrote the book, Stop Feeding Your Cancer. And he and I are currently writing a book called Downsizing the Cancer Industry by publicly sharing the science behind cancer's favorite food. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Colin Campbell. By virtue of doing research for this book, I kind of learned his story a little bit better. In 1968, Colin was on the faculty of Virginia Tech, and they sent him to the Philippines to work on a problem of malnutrition among children. So everybody thought that all the problems with diet was all about protein, and the whole world should be eating the top quality protein like we do in the developed world. And so naturally, that was his initial thought going in there. He was raised on a dairy farm and all this. He gets there, he has this amazing observation. The children of the wealthier families had the greatest incidence of liver cancer. And he's saying, that doesn't make any sense. It goes against everything I've ever been taught. He said, I gotta find out if anybody's done any more research on that. So in 1968, maybe while he was in the Philippines, he researched the data. He found that there had been a study done in India by a few researchers. And they had studied laboratory animals, and they had concluded that they could turn cancer on and off by adjusting the concentration of animal protein in their diet. And it was an obscure study that nobody was talking about, nobody reported it, but Colin said, my God, this is too amazing to have two things happen right here in 1968. This is 3 years before Nixon declared war on cancer, remember? So that was a changing point in his career. The mainstream assumption in 1968, and still today, what causes cancer in rats also causes cancer in humans. Colin asked somebody sitting next to him on an airplane, one of his fellow faculty type members, I think he was from MIT, he told him about these two observations, and the guy said, you know, Colin, you better watch yourself here. This is crazy. There's no way that could possibly happen. Those Indian researchers probably got the labels on the cages mixed up in those rats, and he says, for God's sake, there's no way animal protein can promote cancer. So Colin knew, I've got a big deal on my hands here, and my career is at stake. But being the man of total integrity that I know Colin to be, and a smart man, he said, I'm not going to just give up on this, but I'm also not going to shoot myself in the foot. So he takes the next 10 or 15 years. He did 25 animal studies in the lab. He did an additional 25 lab studies testing the same things. And he wanted to find out what's going on. I asked him recently, I said, Colin, after all of that study, when did it become, and scientists never say something absolutely happens. You know, it's always, you know, couched with percentages, likelihood, and that sort of thing. He said, I became abundantly convinced in 1983 that animal protein is very much a part of promoting cancer in animals and probably the same in humans. But he wouldn't say that it was definitely. He went public finally in 2005 in the China study, and he told a lot of things in the China study that, by the way, it sold over 2 million copies. Just one of them was Bill Clinton, and somebody probably gave it to him. He said cancer is not natural. It's not just an accidental kind of thing. Most cancers are preventable. He called casein the most relevant carcinogen ever identified. And I'm surprised he hadn't been put in prison for that. But I will talk about this a little bit later. He has been somewhat put in prison because once he started producing reports and publicizing reports and putting it in a book, things that implicated the meat and dairy industries, his career took a nosedive. He sacrificed his career to tell the truth. And in the book, we ask, why is there only one nutritional scientist in the world that is telling us these facts or this theory? And the short answer to that is your career is over if you don't step in line with who's paying the bills. And it happened to Colin, and I've kind of been around to see some of that. He also said the U.S. government should be telling everyone that diet toxicity is the leading cause of cancer. Now, John Kelly has never met Colin Campbell, I think, until this past summer. But a friend of his told him about the China Study book in 2005, right after it came out. John Kelly was a medical doctor, family physician in Ireland. He's about the same age as Colin. They're around 80 now. Colin's 82. And so he read the China Study, and he couldn't believe it. I mean, he couldn't believe what he was learning about cancer and about those rats in the laboratory. And, you know, there had been no human studies. I mean, we're going back to 1968 when the first animal studies were done. The cancer industry, even after Nixon declared war on cancer, no one ever conducted a human trial to determine whether Campbell's findings in the lab were applicable to humans. So Kelly said, my goodness, this is crazy. So he went to people that he knew as other physicians in his practice. He went to oncologists that he knew, cancer doctors. He tells me today, Kelly does, that he doesn't think a single oncologist in the world has read the entire China Study. And what we talked about in our book that may never be published for reasons I'll tell you later at book signing if you want. But this book that we're writing basically is saying that the cancer industry is not looking for a total cure to cancer. They are money driven, they're a business, and they're looking for treatments that will go on forever. It's now over $1 trillion. It affects the economy now, and it's going strong, and that's what's happening. In Kelly's work, he said, well, if I can't get the oncologist to do this human trial, I'll do it myself. And he had lots of patients in his practice, family physician, that also had cancer and were going to their cancer doctors. And so he told them, and they were all friends of his, they all loved him, he was their family physician. He said, look, read this book and do this. Do it for 1 month. He just said animal protein free, and he even said they could have a little bit of fish if they needed it. But he just wanted them to do it. He said, just do it. And he said he would have preferred that the oncologist did this study because it would have gotten much more attention from the mainstream news. He couldn't do that, so he said he would do it himself with his patients. When his patients he also recommended, the patients kept going to their cancer doctors. He didn't change anything. He just wanted them to change their diet and see what happened. They went to their cancer doctors, and some of them told their cancer doctors about this diet they were doing. They were told, you're wasting your time with that. You know, that's the reaction from throughout the cancer industries to anything like this. And that's what's so frustrating to people like me. So Kelly's track record in the 10 years or so that he did that, he's now retired, he had 70 patients that stayed on this diet, cancer patients, 70 cancer patients. Not a single one has died except for one with pancreas cancer. He explains that in his book, Stop Feeding Your Cancer. You can get it. You can't get it on in print anymore, and that's the issue I'm having with publishing this book. He's got a problem with his publisher, but you can get an e-copy for like $10 and have it immediately. So 1971 and 2016, the war on cancer. Nixon, I did a blog back a few years back when the war on cancer got to be older than all of America's military wars combined, the war on cancer. And we're no closer to finding a cure because no one's looking for a cure. They're looking for treatments. So now we get Barack Obama and Joe Biden this year. And I saw that on the news and I said, damn it, this is a golden opportunity. We need to jump on this big time. And so I wrote a total of 6 letters to Biden's office. I also wrote, one of those letters was to the ambassador to Ireland because Biden was going to be in Ireland and I was hoping that he would take time to meet with Dr. Kelly. 6 reaching out. I sent one of those letters, went on an 18 by 24 poster board. It got returned when it arrived by UPS, and so I had them resend it USPS. You know, you don't get things like that delivered to the White House. They wouldn't accept it at the White House. But they accepted if the United Postal Service was carrying it. I got 2 form letter responses. And in this letter, every letter I wrote, I had this question. In the 11 years since the China study was published, why hasn't the NIH or any other cancer research organization conducted a single human study aimed at determining if Dr. Campbell's lab findings were transferable to human cancer patients? By the way, we're now raising money to do that study. As a board member of the T. Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies, we make money based on this course that we give in plant-based nutrition, but we're also seeking out donations from wealthy individuals who are believers in Colin's work, and we're doing the best we can to get that launched. It's going to cost about $6 million. Now, $6 million sounds like a lot of money to me, and maybe to you, but the average cancer drug costs $2.5 billion to get to market. So it's not a really big deal. Now the Biden's group just published this last week. The Blue Ribbon Panel came through with all of this information, and only one of them offered any hope that they might say something about diet. That's number 7. Well, they didn't. Basically, they said the same old garbage about possible causes of cancer.